Hello 5th grade, so today we are going to start this printmaking assignment where we create a Victorian row home and then we print it multiple times across our paper in different colors to create a city. And our learning objectives for this assignment is that we can demonstrate a subtractive printmaking process to reduce multiple images, so we're going to repeat it 5 times, and we can create an original building based upon elements of architecture. Types of roofs, columns, arches, windows, doors, porches, towers, stairs, and ramps. So the way that we're going to start this assignment is I have a handout that shows you visually some examples of some row homes, and we talked about how row homes are really skinny buildings right next to each other in urban areas. And we looked at the Victorian era with lots of detail, arched windows and doors, scalloped roofs. Sometimes they have this area, like bay area, sticking out for the windows. And so you're going to get a small white piece of paper, and you're going to need to write your name on the small white paper and the day you have art. Day A, day B, day C. You're going to flip it over, and you're going to use a ruler to draw your Victorian row home. And you can see I already have mine drawn, so you don't have to watch me draw it. Row homes typically have at least 2 floors. A lot of them have 3 floors, so whatever you can fit on your paper. It can be a little bit skinnier than the paper, but you want to try and use up as much of the paper as possible. So now we're going to cover that first learning objective. We're going to create a subtractive printmaking process. So what that means is we are going to get a printing plate and we're going to take away part of it so that we can print it. And so you're going to use a styrofoam tray. And what I want you to do first is the trays kind of curve off on the sides. I want you to cut those curved up edges off there so you get a nice flat rectangle. And it's okay if you don't cut perfectly, if it's a little crooked, but try to cut close to the curve so you have as much flat area to work with as possible. And these edges of the styrofoam can be thrown in the trash. Now you're going to take your drawing and you're going to tape it onto your styrofoam piece. You're going to tape it in place. So first thing I'm going to do is trim off the bottom of my paper. You probably won't need to do that because I'll have the paper cut the right size for you. Take the masking tape and tape your paper onto the styrofoam. So I've kind of wrapped the tape around the back of the styrofoam, rub that on there. And then you're going to use a dull pencil. So you don't want to sharpen a pencil, you want a nice dull pencil, and you're going to retrace over your drawing and you want to press down into the styrofoam as you trace. And when you do this, you're going to end up tearing the paper while you do this because you're pressing down into the styrofoam. And you want to go slow because the styrofoam will want to kind of make your pencil wiggle and go different spots and not stay on your pencil line, so go slow. And as you do this, you're going to be tearing your paper because you're pressing into the styrofoam. So I'm going to pick this up. You can see the mark I've made of the roof so far, and you can see the hole in my paper. So that's what happens. You know you're doing it right and you're pressing deep enough if you're tearing your paper in the process. So now I'm going to do these scallops, which is going to be a little tricky. The styrofoam does not want to let me just follow these smoothly. So you're going to kind of have to pick your pencil up. You won't be able to kind of follow it all the way around. Now I didn't talk about it when I talked about the drawing part of it, but when you make your drawing of your Victorian home, you don't want to put your lines too close together because when you trace it into styrofoam, it kind of, those lines end up being just a big thick line instead of 2 separate lines. So if you want a big thick line, that's okay then. But 2 lines really close together aren't going to stay separate on the styrofoam, unfortunately. But doing these arches is pretty difficult. The pencil really does bounce around. Okay, so now I've traced all of my lines. So now I'm going to pull my paper up. It kind of gets stuck into those cracks and crevices. You can see my paper's tearing into pieces. And so there is my styrofoam impression. So I'm going to pull this paper off, and when you pull the tape off, be careful not to bend or crack your styrofoam. Now I need to go back over this with my pencil because it's kind of bumpy and not smooth. Go back over this with my pencil and smooth out these lines. And some areas where my pencil didn't really impress into the styrofoam, I'm going to impress that in now and make this drawing look nice and neat and finished. Now you'd want to be careful not to press so deep that you make a hole in your styrofoam when you pop your pencil through there. But you do want to push down pretty deep into the styrofoam so that you make a nice mark. So you can see the areas where I've already gone over, how they really stand out, and the areas that I haven't gone back over a second time yet, you can barely see them. And that's why you go over it a second time without the paper. Okay, so there is my finished Victorian row home. And now what I want you to do is cut around the edge of your Victorian row home so that you don't have this extra negative space around it. And these pieces that you cut off, you can throw in the trash can. So there is my row home. This paper can also be thrown away unless for some reason you want to keep it and take it home, but that can be recycled. Actually, recycle this and throw away your styrofoam. Okay, so you're going to get a piece of cardboard to make this your printing base. So on the back, I want you to write your name. Maybe do it with marker so that we can clearly see it. Write your name and the day you have art, day A, day B, day C. Flip it over and you're going to put a frame of glue on the back of your styrofoam piece, and you're going to glue this to the middle of your printing plate. Middle, side to side, middle, top to bottom. Okay, so you're going to get a placemat, and I want you to use one of these manila placemats because this gloss medium is pretty messy. And I'm going to use it out of the jar, but I'm going to give you a little cup of it, and it looks like runny glue is really what it looks like. And you're going to take a paintbrush, one of these big black bristled paintbrushes, and you're going to gloss medium the cardboard around your styrofoam. You're not going to gloss medium the styrofoam. So get right up next to the styrofoam, but don't cover the styrofoam with the gloss medium. You really don't need to. And actually, by not doing it, you have a place to stick your hands because this is pretty sticky and gluey. So now what you're going to do before you put this on the drying rack is I want you to do the edges as well, because this helps seal it. And when we print multiple times, we need a printing plate that can stand up to the use of it and change colors and clean it off and change colors. So I want you to gloss medium the edges. Okay, so once you get the gloss medium on the cardboard all the way around and along the edges, you're going to put this on the drying rack to dry. You're going to put this on a separate shelf on the drying rack to dry, because if you put these together like this, they will stick together. And I mean, this gloss medium is very sticky, just like glue. So I want this on a shelf to dry by itself, because if we take all the placemats and stack them on top of each other, they're all going to stick together. So we're going to put this on a drying rack to dry on itself, on a shelf by itself, and put this on the drying rack to dry on the shelf by itself. And then you're going to run this under water, and you really got to work hard to get all this gloss medium out of there. So use warm, hot water if you can, and just really work the bristles and get the water in between and get all this gloss medium out, because the gloss medium can make the bristles stiff and glued together like just a rock. So I need you to clean these out really good and take your time and work with it under the running water to get all of that out of there. Okay, so now that you get your printing plate back and the gloss medium on the cardboard and the edges is dry, you're ready to start printing. So you're going to have a package of baby wipes, because you're going to need them as you work, and you're going to be using printing ink. So I will have a little bit of printing ink in the bottom of the styrofoam tray, and you'll have a roller. And what you want to do is you want to roll out the ink so that it's even on your brayer. So you can see this is not even on my brayer. So you're going to roll one way, then you roll the other way, and you keep rolling back and forth. You want to lift up the brayer and push it back down and roll, and this will help you to get an even coating on your brayer. And you're going to roll onto the white styrofoam. If you get a little ink on the edges of your cardboard, you'll wipe that off, but you want to try to keep the ink on the styrofoam, and you're going to roll back and forth and get all the edges. from the top all the way to the bottom. You can even roll to the side if you think that's going to be more helpful too. So you can roll both directions, vertical and horizontal. When you put the roller back in the tray, please put it to where the handle is off the edge of the tray. And it's okay if the tray kind of tilts up a little bit. Don't just throw it in there and get ink on the handle, because other people are going to use this. So be respectful. You don't want a brayer that has ink all over it. So make sure you leave the handle out. If you have to, you could even tilt it like this, which is going to get ink on this part, but it's better than getting ink on the handle. So after you get your ink rolled onto the styrofoam, you're going to print it on your white paper. But I forgot to mention, the first thing you need to do before you do any of this is write your name on your paper. Your name and the day you have art, day A, day B, day C. And this is going to be the back. And then you're going to take your printing plate, you're going to lay it down on the table, and you're going to take your paper and you're going to line up the edge of your paper with the edge of your first building, and you want to line up the bottom. The bottom of the building should be at the bottom of your paper. If this doesn't happen exactly perfect, that's okay. But I'm going to line up the bottom of my paper, and then I'm going to rub with my hand across the top. Now the ink is sticky, and it's sticky on purpose so that your paper won't move easily on you. It can still move, but the ink is sticky enough to hold the paper in its spot gently, and then you're just going to rub. You want to rub evenly over the whole styrofoam house, and then you're going to carefully peel this off to get your print. And so there's my first one. And remember that our learning objective is to print multiple times. So now you're going to use those baby wipes. You're going to take a wipe and you're going to wipe this ink off of the styrofoam. You won't be able to get all of it, but you can get a lot of it. And I want you to try not to be wasteful with the baby wipes. So I've got some clean area of the baby wipe here, so don't throw it away until you've used most of it. Now as I wipe, I'm starting to get ink on the cardboard. That needs to be wiped up too. Okay, so this is probably as much of this wipe as I can use. So I'm going to set that aside, get a new wipe. I need clean hands as I work, so I'm going to clean my hands off and finish cleaning this plate off. I'm going to get the cardboard part around it, get that wiped off. And it's going to be stained from the color, but I want to get as much off as I can with the wipe. And then I want to make sure my hands are clean because I want to keep my paper clean. My paper's white. Okay, so I'm going to set that wipe aside, and now I'm going to do a new color. Now, what you can do is you can print your plate 5 times across your paper, or what might be fun is to swap printing plates with your friend. And maybe you'll have different row homes right next to each other in a row. But since I only have me, and I don't have other printing plates to use, then I'm going to just use the same one over and over again. Or I could use my printing plate from my example. So my example, I used the same house over and over again because I only had one printing plate. But now I've made the second one, so now I have 2. So I could do a city with the 2 different houses and do it that way. So I think I'm going to do that. So here's my new printing plate. And maybe you swap with your friend and they use yours while you use theirs. And I'm going to use a new color. Need to roll that out. Now this might already be rolled out for you. You might not be the first person to get to the brayer, and so it might already be rolled out for you, and you won't just have to roll it through to get enough ink on there. Now if you get your printing plate clean enough, you could see this one was stained with blues and purples, but this yellow is nice and bright and clean because I cleaned the plate off very well with my wipe. So make sure you clean your plates off really good with the wipe. And now I'm going to use, just to get a little bit of this yellow off the cardboard. I don't think it would hurt, but just to be safe. Now I'm going to take my paper with my first one. Now remember, this is sticky and still wet, so I need to be careful. When I flip this over, I don't want this house, this red house, to touch my yellow house. So I can look through my paper. I can see the red house here. So I'm going to line up the bottom of my paper and put the yellow house very close to the red house because these are row homes. There's not a lot of space between them. and then I'm gonna rub. Now, if they overlap a little bit, the edges, that's okay, but try not to leave a big wide open gap. Now, I got a little bit of yellow ink on my fingers. I'm getting some yellow ink on the back of my paper, but that's okay. The back is okay if it's a little bit inky and messy. So now that I've rubbed this with my fingers, I'm gonna peel this off very carefully. My red is still wet, so I need to not touch that with my fingers, and pull the yellow off. And so there I have two row homes right next to each other. And they touch just a little bit right there, but that's okay if they touch and overlap a little bit. But I don't want big open white spaces. So now I clean off my plate. And again, try not to be wasteful of the wipes. Try and use all of it before you get a new one. Okay, clean off my hands. And set this aside and use my first one. And I'm going to do a new color. Now I'm going to do a different color for each of my buildings. If you want to do just 2 colors or 3 colors throughout the whole thing, you could alternate and make a pattern that way. You could do them all the same color if you want. But you need to print multiple times to meet that learning objective. So I want you to print 5 times across your paper. So again, these are wet, so I need to be careful with them. Flip it over, look through my paper and see where my yellow stops. My yellow stops right about here. I can see through my paper. And this is a long paper, so make sure you have all this area around your printing plate clean, that you don't have ink here or anything like that that's going to get the front of your paper messy. And so I'm going to line up the bottom of my turquoise house with the side and bottom of my yellow house. Down and rub. Now I felt my paper move a little bit there, so I hope it's still a good print. It slid a little bit. Okay, I'm going to carefully peel this up. And it's starting to, my red stuck to my table. So now, there's my 3 houses. Those are really nice, good prints. I'm going to set my paper aside. I need to make sure I get this red off the table, because when I lay my paper down another time, that might be the yellow spot or the turquoise spot, and I'll get ink on my paper there. So you always need to have a nice clean area, clean surface to work, and you want your hands clean too. So you can see I'm going through quite a bit of wipes. And you'll go through a lot of wipes, but I want you to make sure you use most of it before, or all of it really, before you get a new one. So open it up and look for some white spaces and get that plate cleaned off as well as you can. Printing is a slow process, and you really need to be meticulous and clean so that you get nice, neat, clean prints. It can be a very messy process too. Okay, so I'm going to clean my hands off. So if you trade with 5 people, you can have 5 different houses on your paper when you're finished. Okay, so I'm going to get my area clean, make sure my table area is clean, get my paper. So I'm going to look through my paper, find the edge of my blue house here. Bottom of the paper, line up the bottom and the edge of the blue house with my purple house. Okay, so there I have 4. I just have 1 more house to do. And my last house, I want to line it up nice and close to my purple house. I can see through my paper where the purple house is. Move my plate over this direction. So I move my plate this way, because this is the side of the paper I'm doing. I need this area to be clear and free of dirt and mess so that I can have a nice clean paper. And there is my finished city with 5 houses across. Since I have a little white space here, you can bring this to me, or actually when it's dry, I can trim that off for you so it's a nice clean space. And you don't have like some open space like people think, well, what's supposed to go there? I'll chop that off for you, but you get 5 houses on your paper printed nice and neat across the bottom, lined up with the bottom. And then this will go on the drying rack. And then you're going to need to clean off your area. I got some ink on some turquoise ink on my table here, and I need to clean off my printing plate. And you'll put your printed paper and your printing plate on the drying rack to dry. And we'll clean up our trays with the ink and the brayers. We'll get those cleaned up in the sink. They wash out with just plain water, some running water. They'll clean out with that with a sponge. And that's how you're going to create your subtractive printmaking process, printed multiple times, of a Victorian row home. Good job, 5th grade.